This is Justice, and I quite literally couldn't sleep before I said something about this, and with my broken laptop, it's even harder. So I have to do this awkward Google Hangout where the sound is probably terrible and the quality is probably. Anyway, listen. I wanted to tackle this from a different perspective. I'm not here to repeat what anyone has said, and I wanted to say something that I think so many people are missing out in this big, long, ridiculous, much ado about nothing, which is just so frustrating to see happen in real time. Now, for those who aren't aware, apparently someone made a post on Blizzard's forums regarding Overwatch, regarding the character Tracer in Overwatch, and then they suggested that based on what they believe to be a perceived fault in one of her poses, they believe that the pose wasn't appropriate for the character and that perhaps it should be changed or removed or something to that effect. And this was that person's, to some extent, valid opinion. And one of the creative directors of the game actually said that they have considered and they're going to take it out of the game. And as you can imagine, this incensed and pissed off everybody. I mean, everyone. I don't mean just, the Gamergate sword or the culture war, sorry, the culture, the counterculture people. I mean, everyone. I mean, Blizzard fans, Overwatch fans, people are like, this is just ridiculous because this isn't a Mika butt slap. This is quite literally the pose of a character. It's literally Tracer just standing with her back to the camera. Nothing particularly sexualized about it. She's not even like poking out her butt or anything. She's literally got a two-gun pose. This is the typical pose you see on the cover of a lot of games these days. It's the back to the camera pose. But this person had a problem with it, and the Overwatch team said, "Oh, okay, we're going to move it now." See, there's something you need to understand, and the reason why I want to say this, I wanted to come at this from an approach of thinking that what has been missed in all of this, in this PR stunt, apparently to try and appear virtuous, this virtual virtue signaling by the Overwatch team. I'm going to tackle this from the perspective that something hopefully Deanna Kurzner would be proud of, because she has been very influential in a lot of my thought. I don't agree with everything she says, but I definitely think that she presents the fact that there is a middle ground to be found in a lot of this madness. Now, here's the thing. In the first place, right, a lot of people feel like this removing it is completely insane, because what you're basically saying is that if one person finds something offensive or they don't like it or they enjoy, or a small group of people, a vocal minority, that it's okay to remove it, because the Blizzard team's response for the Overwatch team, not Blizzard's not accountable for this whole thing. The Overwatch team's response was effectively, they don't want to make people feel uncomfortable and they want to be welcoming, that usual spiel about being, open and diverse and all that kind of stuff. They said this is their response, right? And what this more or less says is that if someone were to tell them that there's something that makes them feel uncomfortable, would they just remove it? You have to understand that this is a slippery slope. Where do we draw the line? Do we draw the line at just this? This one person said that they didn't like this aspect of the game. So at what point do we stop and say, okay, I'm sorry, but we can't appeal to everyone? And this is where I want to come into it. People have argued this back and forth, so I'm not here to do that. What I have to say is they missed the opportunity to do the right thing. Just like with when NetherRealm Studios made that whole PR thing about Mortal Kombat X, saying that they made the characters less impossible. They designed the female characters to set less impossible standards for women, which was completely ridiculous PR about a Mortal Kombat game, and how the Mika butt slap camera angle was removed from Street Fighter V because they said, because Ono said he wants to make the game less offensive, or for people, he doesn't want people to be offended. Here's the thing that we need to understand about all this. These game companies are releasing this PR in an attempt to look progressive, an attempt to look charitable and virtue signaling. But here's the thing you need to understand. This PR is just saying that they don't want to offend people with their content, but that's impossible. If you don't want to offend people, don't make video games, right? The message should not be about not offending people, because that's a slippery slope. If you don't want to offend people, then you might as well take out Widowmaker and every female character while you're at it from Overwatch. It's the same with the Mika butt slap. Ono saying that they didn't want to offend people with the butt slap camera angle. Well, you listen. The type of person who'd be offended, and I mean actually offended by that, not made uncomfortable, not disagree with it, offended by that, is the kind of person who would probably be offended by Mika and Laura's entire character designs. So taking them out completely would make more sense, but you obviously can't do that, so it shouldn't be about that. See, the Overwatch team missed a big opportunity to nail this cultural war to the ground before it started. What they could have told this concerned citizen who was making some, as I said, to a certain extent, valid, personal, subjective criticisms about Tracer's character. They could have said to this person that we understand your concerns with the depiction of our character in this game. However, the character Tracer is as this person put it in their post, is heroic, is silly, is fun, and this pose is merely a pose meant to show her in another light. They don't have to mention anything about sexiness at all because it's not even a sexy pose. They can then say that this is a typical over-the-shoulder pose that many heroic characters, including male characters, use to give a different form of representation of this character. You know, then they can drive the point home that this is one of many optional poses, and they could even sell their game. This is one of many optional poses available within Overwatch, which allow, characters to express themselves, right? So if you are not happy with this particular pose, there are several other poses in the game which show how heroic and how exciting Tracer is as a character. So they can drive the point home that one, it's an optional pose that you don't have to use, and that even if you aren't happy with how it's represented, this is actually just a typical heroic representation of characters that is not gender specific, that comes from an angle of just showing the character in a different way. They could very easily shown that one, there's nothing wrong with having a pose like this because it's simply optional, and it's simply just another way of showing the character. It isn't strictly sexualization, but even if it is, it's just something that represents the character in a different way. By saying that they're going to remove it to not offend people, or they don't want people to feel uncomfortable, I'm sorry, Blizzard, you have, I keep saying Blizzard, but Overwatch team, you have opened yourself up to a ridiculous backlash from all sides, because you're essentially saying that you want to make the game offensive free. I mean, even I was making jokes on Twitter. Listen, obviously this was a joke. I was like, okay, Blizzard, why don't you remove every fat character? I mean, that offends me. If all it takes is some diatribe on a forum saying how offended you are by something to remove stuff from games, is that all it takes? Listen, I don't want to hit you with all that culture war stuff. I've said my piece. I've gaped all over the place, and there's plenty other people who can explain how dumb this is. But there has been a serious missed opportunity from a person in the place of responsibility to nip this in the bud. You could have sold your game, right? You could have promoted your game. You could have put this person's worries to some extent to rest. You could have made it clear that the characters in this game are loved and respected, and that simply having them represented in one way does not mean that that is their entire character. You could have explained in full detail that a character can be depicted in several different ways, and it doesn't remove or take away anything from them. You could have given a decent PR response that doesn't remove anything from the artistic vision, that doesn't cave into the demands of the easily offended. You could have done all of that, but instead you chose to remove it, thinking that's the easiest way. And to me, that's completely insane. And this is why you're getting so much criticism right now. Because, if you want to call it censorship, if you want to bring SJWs into this and all this kind of stuff, because I would, but I'm not here to do that, because quite frankly, there's enough of the war going on. And I support certain sides. And I want it to keep going on because, well, one, it's exciting, and two, it's getting stuff done. But in my opinion, the thing that we need to focus on right now is that we are missing the opportunity to set the right example. Because if this is about role models and, talking about, how people might be affected by negative representations of female characters, then maybe we could have explained, as I said, from a position of authority, because that's what they have, a position of authority. They are a game developer of a game that's bound to sell millions from a company that already sold millions of copies of other video games. They are in a position of power where they can put out a statement putting this person's worries to rest. And even if they're not satisfied, because if this person, morally disagrees with Tracer's pose in this particular image, then that's their choice. But the Overwatch team had the responsibility to say something and to say that, listen, we're sorry you feel this way about this character, but this pose is not meant to demean the character, to over-sexualize her, or to take away from her other aspect. It is simply a typical over-the-shoulder gaming heroic pose that you see in many gaming cover arts and many other characters, including male characters. This pose is optional. This pose is just one of many other poses in the game which show how heroic our characters are. And if anything, it's also a way to speak to that idea of being a role model, that there's more than one way to show a character being heroic. What this person made you think is over-sexualized might instead be heroic to someone else or inspiring. Maybe it's a little bit cheeky, maybe it's a little bit sensual, but maybe it still gives that feeling of confidence. Maybe that's something that can be a role model to the younger girl, that you can have that, slick, cool look, but still have that feminine side at the same time. You could send that message by giving a better PR response, by basically making it clear that, this is a thing, it's in the game, but it doesn't encompass the entire character, because there's so much debate about whether or not female characters are reduced to objects by their sexualization. And obviously the answer should be no. I find it absurd, and I've always found it absurd. I don't want to retread old ground, but I found it absurd, the idea that it doesn't matter how cool, interesting, awesome a female character is written, how they're depicted, how they're talked about, because if they wear a bikini, then they're just a sex object, or if they strike a sexy pose, then it's objectification and all that kind of stuff. And I've always thought that's unfair. And the thing is, this isn't even that bad. We're talking about a fully clothed, interestingly designed female character with so many awesome aspects. And for this person to say that they're reduced to a sex object, listen, that's their opinion. I could disagree wholeheartedly, but it was the responsibility of the Overwatch team to say, no, we're sorry. I understand you feel that way, but that's the way it is. But by saying that, because here's the thing, the reason why this is such a big controversy is so many people are like, we would understand if this was some internal decision made on your own to change it because you thought, okay, maybe it doesn't fit the character, maybe it's not a pose we want for her specifically. One person on a forum, or maybe several people, who knows, made the comment that they didn't like the way this pose from Tracer looks. And the Overwatch team says they're going to change it based on just that. You can throw out anything about sort of how self-censoring is, done in moderation, how it's about listening to fans, because this isn't about listening to fans. So many people are debating why this doesn't make any sense. That you're not protecting women, you're not protecting children, you're not protecting anyone. To say that this is protecting children, that a character in a pose that is completely innocuous, not a provocative pose, a completely innocuous pose, is somehow hurting children who we haven't even asked the opinions of them, is completely insane. So you see, at the end of the day, right, what this controversy shows to me is, yet again, game developers are caving into the vocal minority for completely ridiculous reasons of trying to look progressive, when really, one, you're not looking progressive. All you're doing is showing that you don't want to offend people, so you're going to let them eat their cake and have it. You're going to remove certain things but not others. So you're just going to appear like hypocrites while claiming to be progressive, when in fact all you're doing is removing content that so many other people like, and it's completely innocent, harmless fun for completely ridiculous reasons. Yet again and again, game companies are making these odd decisions to appear virtuous when that's not what's happening at all. When they had this power, this responsibility to say the right thing, they could have set the right example. They could have, showed that they have the interest of gamers in mind, that they're protecting their artistic integrity, that they can talk to people who perhaps may not be as knowledgeable about gaming and gaming art, and explain that, no, you have to understand that this is not meant to be over-sexualized. This is just a game. This is just a typical gaming pose, and this character has many other poses, right? They could have really nipped this in the bud, but instead they took the easy way out, and now it's costing them. So that's all I came to say. I don't know how well this came out. This recording is done through Google Hangouts, so it's probably going to be a blow up. I'm going to listen to the archive when I get the chance. Let me know what you think. This is going to be a completely ridiculous thing that's happened. At the end of the day, it's just it's a drop in the bucket. It's an eye roll. And that's it. But it's endemic of a continuing problem of, I'm going to say it, censorship. Yes, censorship doesn't just come from the media, the Illuminati, or whatever ridiculous stuff people think. Unfortunately, stuff is being removed from games, usually pertaining women. Stuff is being removed from games simply because someone's offended, and that's something we have to be concerned about. Okay, it doesn't have to be culture war. It doesn't have to be yelling. It doesn't have to be outsides. It's just something we have to be concerned about. It's as simple as that. And in the case of the people at the top, they have to seriously reconsider how they tackle this. Because saying that we don't want to offend people, or saying that we're going to make it more realistic, or any of these strange excuses they come up with, is just not going to cut it. So that's what I think. Thanks for listening.